Sunday morning or Saturday or Friday or whatever their day of worship, and that's where you have to meet that power, because that's the only place you can meet it. It's everywhere in the universe, but the only place you can meet it is in their place. That shows you how ridiculous it is for black people to ever allow themselves to be pitted against one another on the basis of their what? Their religious difference. We therefore should by sheer intelligence be what? Tolerant of one another's religious expression. Other than that, you're not spiritual, you're religious. What's the difference between spiritual and religious? Spiritual means that you are aware and of your connection with the total cosmic scheme. What does that mean? The whole universe around you, and with all life forms in the universe. You are aware that there's a divine intelligence which governs that, and you seek to come more into understanding and in oneness with that intelligence. Right? That was the object, as Dr. George G.M. James tells us, of all learning, was to bring us in harmony with the one, for whom there was no house built. You can't build a house to contain the one. Right? Now, that's spirituality. Religion is the path that you choose to set you in a disciplinary road to be in harmony with that one. Just like when you come into New York, you can either come across the George Washington Bridge, you can either come through, you got 2-3 tunnels to come in through here, you got several roads to come in here. You'd be a fool to stand there at the Lincoln Tunnel and say, anybody not coming in through the Lincoln Tunnel is not into the truth. They will not make it to New York. You'd be a fool. And whenever we do that with our religious ideologies, with our religious institutions, we are not worshiping the Creator. We are getting off on our egos. We are intellectually masturbating, is what we're doing. We're getting our egos off because we got a carte blanche on God. We got a hold on God, and nobody else got this hold but me. And the church I go to, or the sect of Islam I'm into. Now, there's some folk will get angry with me about that. However, in order for us to be liberated and get on the high level, and we can whip this white man. We can whip it. It's no doubt about it in my mind. Not him holding us up in that regard. I mean, he's doing everything he can, but even with all he does, he couldn't do it. He couldn't hold us up if it wasn't for one thing, or one of the things, because there are many complex things there, and that is us constantly struggling with each other over these little petty differences. And in our high culture civilizations, the Moors went into Spain and conquered it. Even though they were Muslims, they were tolerant of Christians, Jews, and everybody else, because they knew all of these were just various expressions of God. Now, in Mecca, where they didn't know nothing in the first place, and they finally got them a religion that they could hold on to, their thing was, accept Islam or die. There's only one way. There's only one God, Allah, and if you don't accept that, there ain't nothing. But the African, once he got hold of Islam, he did what he does with every other religion. What's that? You see how I can apply it to the situation. That's it. Okay, I didn't mean to get all off up into that. Let me come back now. Hikupata, house of the god Ptah, and that's a Greek term. That's what the Greeks called it. Actually, it's Kemetan language, but the Greeks called it that, and they couldn't say Hikupata, so they said Egypt. So they were very tongue-tied. They couldn't speak well. When they supposed to call Ethiopia Kush, they couldn't say Kush, so they said Ethiopia. That's it. They did the best they could. The Greeks will tell you that themselves. They didn't even know how to speak before they met the African. But I'm running ahead of myself. Y'all all right? You with me? Okay. Let me get back to. Let me get back. We're still on that first document, aren't we? We have established where he says where the Bible originated in ancient Kemet, on the continent of Akebu land, the land of the blacks is where it began. And that he goes on to say another thing in there, that it's 3,000 years older. 3,000 years older than the Hebrews. We will be discussing the Hebrews as we go on further, because the father of the Hebrews doesn't come on the scene until 1675 before the Common Era. And we don't say before Christ, because when you say before Christ, you're assuming that everybody in the world has accepted Christ as, or Jesus as they call him, as the pivotal point of history. And other people do not reckon time that way. Many other people, Buddhists do not, Muslims do not, Hebrews do not. A lot of people don't do that, so you cannot arrogantly assume that everybody does that. So what Dr. Ben did, and we owe him so much, what he did was say before the Common Era, because so many people do use that as a dating factor simply because what? Europeans went around the world, what? Colonizing other people and brought their corrupt brand of Christianity with them as they went, because Christianity wasn't originally a European religion, but that's another topic. And BCE, before the Common Era, and instead of AD, which they say in the Christian world, Anno Domino, in the year of our Lord, it's CE of the Common Era. So that's the reference we'll be making here. That also clears up a lot of stuff for us as well, because the way you reckon time also impacts upon you that which is important to you. We reckon time by those events that what? Mean something to us, that we hold of great value. If you keep calling it before Christ or Anno Domino, then you're saying that you hold of greatest value of all things that you know, the European concept of Jesus, and that everyone else must as well. So that's why that was one of the liberating factors there of changing our reference to time. Dr. Williams tells us also the most important is language and names, because one of the ways that they take you away from yourself is to change your name and the names about everything else that is familiar and important to you, and put their names and what is important and familiar to them. Therefore, you have the image of white supremacy implanted on everything, and we therefore duplicate that image, which is self-destructive to us mentally and spiritually and retards our growth as a people. That's why I take the time to get into the language. Linguistics is a very important study, and to date references and things like that nature. So in 1675, before the Common Era, we have a cat named Abraham we'll be talking about a little later, who comes on the scene. This is the first Hebrew, the first one to cross the water. Now, what was going on in the world before that? What were people doing before that? What did people have as a moral standard before that? What did they have as a holy text before that? They had among the many, because they had them in India, they had them over here in what they call Middle America, which wasn't called America then, over here in the Western Hemisphere. They had them in the islands of the sea. They had them everywhere you could go. You found different texts. And one of the major texts that most all of them had come from, because these people had traveled around the world, was the text developed by the ancient Cushites, who we'll be dealing with a little more as we go on, called the Book of the Coming Forth by Day and by Night, misnomered by the European again because of his tunnel vision. He's the original Cyclops. He has one eye when he looks at things. He cannot see things clearly in a balanced fashion. He called it the Egyptian Book of the Dead because he thought it was about death. not understanding it was about life continued on, that we didn't have any concept of any death in Africa. There's no concept of death with the original African. No such thing exists. You just go through cycles of constant development in life. So that book was served as the basis for all of the others, and we'll be coming back to that in a minute. So that book has been around. Rogers is saying at least 3,000. It says 3,000 or more years. Yes, we know this, that the Kemetan, the beginnings of the Kemetan Empire and the Kemetan nation can be traced back somewhere between 18,000. Listen to this, brothers and sisters. 18,000 to 17,500 years BCE. That's almost 20,000 years ago. Now, the reason why I'm putting emphasis on that, I hope y'all don't mind my going into so much detail here. I don't know how many documents we get through, but we will get a lot of information. The reason why I'm going into that is because, first of all, we tend to think of African history, black people's history, as going only as far back as what? 1619, when they brought 20 of us over here, 21 of us over here on a slave ship. Here, but we know our history goes beyond that. We say, okay, maybe in West Africa you can go back 500, 600, 700 years ago or something like that. We had empires. But to think in terms of 18,000 years? And this was just one nation coming out of an older nation.